7 years of unbroken slavery over Israel. The sun had not yet risen when Gideon, son of Joash, crept silently down to the winepress, not to press grapes, but to thresh wheat hidden from the enemies who swept every harvest clean. A powerful man, reduced to hiding like a fugitive in his own land. He could not have imagined, in that silent moment below ground, that the destiny of an entire nation was about to change because of him, because of one act of hidden, trembling courage. How would you react if an angel appeared before you and said, "The Lord is with you, mighty warrior"? Gideon looked around. He was certain those words were not meant for him. The man trembling in the dark, hiding food in the bottom of a winepress. Mighty warrior. Him, the least in his family, from the weakest clan in the tribe of Manasseh. Something extraordinary was about to happen, and Gideon still had no idea how immense the thing God saw inside him truly was. For 7 long years, the Midianites had devastated Israel like a swarm. Each time the harvest was ready, they descended on the land, destroying everything, stealing livestock, burning crops, leaving only hunger and despair behind. The people had become a shadow of what they once were. Where there had been families, now there were ruins. Where there had been hope, now there was fear. And Gideon had grown up in this broken world, believing it would always be this way. And it was there, in the depths of that dark winepress, that the angel of the Lord found him. The words he heard seemed impossible, but something inside Gideon trembled in a completely different way. It was not the old fear. It was something he could not yet name, a spark lit in the darkness, a voice whispering that maybe, just maybe, Israel's story did not have to end this way, that perhaps one ordinary man, full of doubt, could change everything. His answer would reshape the world. That very night, the ancient world paused before an impossible question. Would God choose the absolute weakest man for the greatest battle? The answer Gideon would give in the next few hours would determine not only the future of an entire nation, but it would reveal a profound principle echoing through millennia, that God's strength is perfected in human weakness. The last on the list are often first in the heart of God. His grand journey was only just beginning. To understand Gideon, you must deeply understand the world he lived in. Israel had entered the promised land full of faith and victory, but generation after generation, the people turned away from God. They forgot the miracles of Egypt, the parted Red Sea, and the manna from the sky. Every time Israel broke its covenant with the Lord, the exact pattern repeated. An enemy rose, fierce oppression came, and the people only remembered God when they hit rock bottom. This time, the cruel enemy was called Midian. For 7 brutal years, Midianite and Amalekite tribes swept down from the desert on camels, a truly terrifying sight for Israelites who only fought on foot. They were absolutely countless. Scripture says their armies covered the valley like a swarm of locusts, and their camels were as numerous as sand on the seashore. Where they passed, the land was left completely empty, burned, dead, as if life itself had fled in terror. The people of Israel had taken desperate refuge inside mountain caves. Entire families abandoned their homes and hid in deep rocky crevices and completely inaccessible ravines. Children grew up without ever knowing what a peaceful meal looked like, constantly fearing enemies appearing on the horizon. Fields that should have been green and fertile lay entirely abandoned. The prosperity God had promised seemed like a distant memory, an impossible dream to ever reach again. It was in this landscape of devastation that Israel finally cried out to the Lord. The prayer did not come from prosperity, it came from despair. And God, faithful to his covenant, answered. But the answer was not what they expected. God did not send a powerful army. He did not choose a famous warrior. He did not pick a king or high priest. He turned his eyes toward a hidden man, trembling with fear, threshing wheat in secret, and chose exactly that man to change everything. Gideon was the son of Joash, from the clan of Abiezer in the tribe of Manasseh. In his culture, that said everything, and none of it was good. Manasseh was a lesser tribe. The clan of Abiezer was even more insignificant, and within that small clan, Gideon was the youngest son, last on every list. By the standards of the ancient world, he was literally the last possible choice. No military recruiter would knock on his door. No prophet would call his name, except God himself. The angel of the Lord came and sat under the oak tree at Ophrah. When Gideon saw him, his first reaction was not worship. It was honest questioning. If the Lord is with us, why has all this happened to us? Where are the miracles our ancestors told us about? Where is the God who brought Israel out of Egypt? Gideon's question was raw and real. It was the question of a man who had grown up hearing stories of faith, but living a reality completely different from those stories. God's answer was not a theological explanation. It was a direct call. Go with the strength you have and save Israel from the hand of Midian. I am sending you. Gideon tried to escape with a logical argument. How can I save Israel? My clan is the weakest in Manasseh, and I am the least in my family. It was an honest confession of weakness, but God was not looking for a perfect man. He was looking for an available man. And Gideon, even afraid, was right there. Before fully accepting, Gideon asked for a sign. He prepared a goat, unleavened bread, and broth, placing them on a rock as an offering. The angel touched the food with the tip of his staff, and fire burst from the rock, consuming everything instantly. The angel vanished. Gideon stood still, staring at the scorched rock, his heart pounding. The doubt remained. But something stronger than doubt was present now. A fragile certainty, delicate as a flame in the wind, but completely real. And Gideon asked for yet another sign, this time with a fleece of wool. Lord, if you will save Israel through my hand, let dew be on the fleece only while the ground around stays dry. In the morning the fleece was soaked and the ground perfectly dry. Gideon wrung out the fleece and filled a bowl with water, but he still asked, let the fleece be dry this time while dew falls on the ground. And God, with infinite patience, answered his request once more. That same night, God gave Gideon his first mission, and it was far more dangerous than fighting Midianites. It was to tear down the altar of Baal his own father built in the middle of the city, to attack the idol of the entire community. In that era, destroying Baal's altar could easily cost your life. The townspeople could rise up and execute the offender before dawn. Gideon knew this, so he went. He went at night, with 10 servants, deeply afraid, but he still went. In the morning, the city found the altar destroyed and a bonfire in its place, consuming a bull sacrificed to the Lord. The people erupted in pure fury. Who had done this? Discovering it was Gideon, they marched to Joash's house demanding his son's death. But Joash surprisingly defended the young man. If Baal is truly a god, let him defend himself. The crowd hesitated. That day, Gideon received a new name, Jerubbaal. Let Baal contend with him. The first victory was won. Shortly after, the Midianites and Amalekites crossed the Jordan and camped in the valley of Jezreel. They numbered 350,000 warriors. 350,000. The number was so staggering it seemed fabricated. Israel was totally surrounded, but something changed in Gideon. The Spirit of the Lord wrapped around him like armor. Without planning, he blew the shofar and summoned warriors. Something had awakened inside him. There was absolutely no going back. The response to Gideon's daring call was truly remarkable. 32,000 men stood up ready to fight. It was a considerable force. but absolutely nothing against the 350,000 enemies waiting in the valley. Gideon felt the heavy weight of responsibility like a stone on his chest. Those men trusted him. They were willing to die for a cause he barely believed was possible. Then a message from God arrived that turned everything upside down once again. "You have too many people," said God. "If I give you victory with this army, Israel will boast and say they won by their own strength. Send home everyone who is afraid." Gideon froze. Send home the ones who were afraid? He himself was afraid, but he obeyed. 22,000 men left, 2/3 of the army disappearing down the dusty road. Gideon looked at the 10,000 who remained, searching for enough faith inside himself to keep moving forward. 10,000 was still an impossible number against 350,000 enemies, but it was something. Then God spoke again. "There are still too many. Take them down to the water and I will sort them out. Those who kneel to drink, send away. Those who lap water from their hands, keep. Out of 10,000 men, only 300 lapped water from their hands, 300 men against an ocean of enemies." God's mathematics has never been the world's mathematics. 300 against 350,000. The ratio was more than 1 to 1,000. By any human calculation, it was suicide. Gideon's 300 men were just a whisper of a voice before an ocean of enemies. But God had promised, "With these 300 I will save you and deliver Midian into your hands." And Gideon had learned something in recent days. When God makes a promise, the question is not whether it will happen, just when and how. That night before the attack, God said to Gideon, "If you are still afraid, go down to the enemy camp with your servant Purah and listen to what they are saying. It will give you courage." Gideon crept silently into the darkness, crawling near the enemy tents. The Midianite camp was vast, spread across the valley like an improvised city. Campfires here and there, sentinels patrolling. And there, in the middle of it all, Gideon overheard a conversation that changed everything. Two Midianite soldiers were discussing a dream. A loaf of barley bread had rolled down the hill and knocked over the camp tent. The other replied immediately, "This can only be the sword of Gideon, son of Joash. God has given Midian into his hands." Gideon froze. The enemy themselves knew their defeat was coming. They knew who would defeat them. He knelt right there in the darkness of the enemy camp and worshipped the Lord in deep, grateful silence. When Gideon returned to the Israelite camp, he was transformed. The fear was still there, but something far greater was governing his steps now. He woke the 300 men in the middle of the night and gave each of them a trumpet, a clay jar, and a torch burning inside the jar. "Do what I do," he said with a steady voice. "When I blow my trumpet, all of you blow yours and shout, 'The sword of the Lord and of Gideon.'" The plan seemed like madness. It was God's plan. It was the first watch of the night. The Midianite camp slept under a starlit sky, completely unaware of what was coming. 350,000 warriors, confident in their strength, indifferent to the darkness around them. Then Gideon and his 300 men divided into 3 companies and silently surrounded the valley. Each man holding a trumpet in one hand and the clay jar with the burning torch in the other. Their hearts pounded like war drums. The signal finally came. Gideon blew his trumpet, and then, in a single instant, 300 trumpets exploded in the silence of the night. 300 clay jars shattered with a deafening crack, and 300 torches blazed like stars in the darkness. 300 voices erupted as one, "The sword of the Lord and of Gideon." The sound came from every direction at once, impossible to locate. The Midianite camp woke in absolute, total panic. What happened next was not planned by any human strategist. The Lord caused the Midianite warriors to turn their swords against one another. In the chaos and darkness, friends attacked friends. Soldiers sleeping side by side woke up, unable to tell where the danger was, and began killing their own companions. The most powerful army in the region collapsed completely, not from a battle, but from a supernatural terror that ignited from deep within the camp itself. The surviving Midianites fled in a rout across the valley of Jezreel toward the Jordan. Gideon sent messengers to the tribes of Israel to intercept the fugitives and quickly block the river crossings. Victory was spreading like wildfire across the dry fields. A tiny army of 300 men had put to flight the largest military force the region had ever seen, not because they were stronger, but because God had promised. And God never breaks his word. The Midianite commanders Oreb and Zeb were captured by the men of Ephraim and executed. Their heads were brought to Gideon as a sign of victory, but the battle was not yet over. 2 Midianite kings, Zebah and Zalmunna, had fled with 15,000 survivors. Gideon pursued them beyond the Jordan with his 300 men, still exhausted, still hungry. What sustained those men when human strength ran out was one unshakable certainty. God had sent them. Gideon asked the elders of Succoth for bread to feed his exhausted men. The response was cruel. "Have you already captured Zebah and Zalmunna that we should feed your army?" Gideon promised he would return and punish them. The same happened in Penuel, but he did not stop. He pursued, crossed the desert, surprised the 2 kings at Karkor and captured them. When he returned to Succoth and Penuel, he kept every word he had spoken. Justice came for those who had doubted him. Before the captured kings, Gideon asked a question heavy with grief. "What were the men like that you killed at Mount Tabor?" "They were like you," the kings replied. "They looked like sons of a king." Gideon fell silent. Those were his brothers, his own blood, killed by these same men who now lay at his feet. He ordered his oldest son to execute them. The boy hesitated. He was too young. It was Gideon who raised the sword. It was the end of a 7-year war. Israel had finally been set free. The exact same people who had spent 7 grueling years hiding in dark caves now walked with their heads held high. The same valley once swept clean by enemies was being peacefully cultivated again. And it had all started with one man hiding in a dark winepress full of fear. The nation turned to Gideon with overflowing gratitude and offered him the ultimate prize any leader would covet: rule over us, you, your son, and your grandson after you. The Lord shall rule over you. I will not rule, nor will my son. That was Gideon's answer. In a world where power was everything, where kings killed to hold their thrones, Gideon refused. He had started as the least in the weakest family of the most insignificant clan. And now, at the height of his victory, he chose humility. His story could have ended in human glory. He chose instead to point toward a greater glory, the only one that truly matters and never fades. Israel lived in peace for 40 years during Gideon's lifetime. 40 years without war, without fear, without hiding in caves. An entire generation grew up under the open sky, planting and harvesting without the terror of invaders. The man who had trembled in a dark winepress gave his people 4 decades of peace, not because he was a superhero, not because he was perfect, but because he said yes when God called, and because he chose to obey even with his heart racing with fear. Textopodrome. But Gideon's story is not just about the past. It speaks directly to you. How many times have you hidden in your own winepress, burying your dreams, your gifts, your hopes, afraid of what the world would do with them? How many times have you heard that voice saying you are too small, too weak, too late? Gideon was exactly that. And God chose him not in spite of his weaknesses, but through them. It is there, in acknowledged weakness, that the miracle begins. The sign of the wet and dry fleece Gideon asked for was not weak faith, it was honesty. Gideon did not pretend to have faith he did not possess. He went to God with his doubts, his fears, his hard questions, and God answered each one with infinite patience. True faith is not the absence of doubt. It is the courage to keep going, even when doubt is present. It is blowing the trumpet with trembling hands. It is breaking the jar without seeing what waits on the other side. And the 300 men. There is a powerful lesson hidden in that impossible number. God reduced the army not to make the battle harder, but so the glory would be unmistakably his. When you face an impossible situation, when the numbers do not work out, when what you have seems insufficient, remember Gideon. The question was never how many you had on your side. The question has always been, is God on your side? If the answer is yes, you are already the majority. Gideon proved that God does not look for the most qualified, he qualifies the called. The greatest enemy Gideon needed to defeat was not Midian, it was the voice inside him saying he was not capable. Each of us carries a dark winepress where we hide our dreams out of fear. Each of us hears that voice saying, we are the least, the weakest, last on the list. But what if God is looking precisely for someone like that? Honest about weakness, but willing to take the next step. Gideon's battle was won with trumpets, broken clay jars and torches in the dark, simple instruments in the hands of frightened men. It wasn't the sophistication of weapons that decided the battle. It was obedience in the middle of the night. It was the willingness to show up, take position, and blow the trumpet without certainty of the outcome. What God asks of you today may look just as simple. One small act of obedience. One step in the dark. A trumpet blown with trembling hands. Gideon's story did not end with his death. It keeps being rewritten in the life of every person who decides to say yes to an impossible calling. If this story stirred something inside you, do not let that spark go out. Share it with someone hiding in their own winepress right now. Subscribe to keep journeying through the stories that change the world. Because the same voice that told Gideon, "The Lord is with you, mighty warrior," may be saying the very same thing to you today.